Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots. Who let yourselves, debt slaves, serfs, peasants, vassals? Who let yourselves, debt slaves, serfs, peasants, vassals? I am Useful Idiot, and today I want to talk about the New World Order, or better yet, the New World Moral Order. This was a concept that Franklin Delano Roosevelt came up with in 1942 when he was President of the United States, and of course had been for some time. And just as the United States entered the war, he already had a vision of what the post-war world would look like. And as a student of history, I find this really fascinating, a number of reasons. One is the fact that the U.S. had just entered the war in 1942, and it was a little presumptuous for the United States to be thinking about how they would set up the post-war world, considering we barely even had a standing army at that point. And the other interesting fact, of course, is that apparently a number of people in the world at that time, including Adolf Hitler of Nazi Germany, had a vision of a new world order in 1942. So we had just competing visions of what the new world order should look like. And an artist in Philadelphia actually created a map, and I have included that below in the links, and a map of what this world would look like. And it's pretty fascinating, because everything was going to be created into grouped into federations, a la the Eurozone now, a federation of nations creating a more or less United States of Europe. And so what we have in the New World Moral Order created by Franklin Delano Roosevelt is a United States of South America. And United States itself would have included everything from Canada, Mexico, all the way through Central America, Greenland, Cuba, the Caribbean, Taiwan, the Philippines, and all the Pacific Islands were to be part of the United States. Then we had the Union of South African States, or Union of African States, and that was another conglomerate of nations created into a federation. And then the Arabian Federated Republics would have been Iraq, Syria, and Saudi Arabia as one unit. Then the United Republics of China, which would have included Korea, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam, all as part of a greater China. A Federated Republics of India, which would have included a greater India, including Afghanistan, Pakistan, Nepal, Burma. And then a greater USSR envisioned at the time that would have included Manchuria, Mongolia, Finland, Eastern Europe, and Iran. So this is very telling in a number of ways. The fact that already in 1942, Franklin Delano Roosevelt had a vision that included giving land to the United States, or the USSR, which it envisioned continuing in the post-war world, and then granting more of territory and sovereign nations of Asia to China, and more sovereign nations and territories to a greater India. All rather presumptuous, to say the least. And there would be a United States of Scandinavia, which would include Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. And all of these things that we kind of see in the modern policies in the world, where there seems to be a gravitation towards federation and greater integration in the guise of trade agreements and banking agreements, as we see in the Eurozone now. And certainly I can't see any reason why they wouldn't envision that for Asia and Africa as well. So these same kind of concepts obviously go back quite a bit further than people suspect sometimes. And of course, these ideas go even further back than World War II and the 1940s as well. Some of the notable details about this FDR plan was that all subjects of Japan would be expelled from the Western Hemisphere, and all subjects of Germany and Italy and Japan would have been expelled from the Western Hemisphere, which is pretty egregious move. And then the fact that only Ireland, Greece, and Turkey inexplicably would be allowed to be independent states, not part of a federation. Not really sure why Ireland, Greece, and Turkey were to be allowed to be sovereign states in the midst of all these federated zones. And then there would also be a designated Hebrew land carved out of Palestine and Jordan. So that plan was on the table after World War I, and the plan was continued to be on the table for World War II with American blessing. Interestingly called Hebrew land. And that population control would be used in all the conquered territories in the post-war world, and we see echoes of that in our own time. And then based on this Franklin Delano Roosevelt speech given at the time, we see a lot of things that echo the project for a new American century of the 1990s under Rumsfeld, Cheney, and Wolfowitz, and current foreign policy goals. And let's go through some of these. The FDR called this New World Order the New World Moral Order, with, of course, the U.S. must assume the leadership of this New World Moral Order because we are the moral power. Permanent disarmament of the rest of the world, and then the invincibility of U.S. military power shall be a major prerequisite. So, interestingly, at the beginning of the war, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was already envisioning an unchallengeable, invincible U.S. military and a permanent disarmament of the rest of the world, and certainly part of a foreign policy agenda for the long term in the United States today. And then a world court, there would be a world court, and we see moves towards that sort of idea with the United Nations. All colonies would be given up, but of course what Roosevelt was talking about is that all European powers and all other powers other than the United States would give up our colonies, and that recolonization in the name of resource grabs would be fine for the United States. There would be, and also a creation of a whole bunch of new states. And interestingly enough, this plan of the FDR plan of 1942, we're seeing in State Department maps that are being used now to show a world where new states will be carved out as fragmentation takes over in the geopolitical world in places like Pakistan and in countries in Africa and also Southeast Asia. And part of this FDR plan was fairly shocking in that there would be a world monetary system, which we see echoes of in our era, a world maximum interest rate of 2%. Interestingly, one would have to get the banking community on board with that, and the banking community at that time was certainly an octopus, much as it is today. So that must have been part of a banking idea and a concept for a banking elite to run the world with a world monetary system and a maximum world interest rate of 2%. And then nationalization of all world resources, nationalization of all banks, foreign investments, railroads, and power. Ostensibly, I presume, to be put in control of the United States and Britain, who would be the accepted powers in the world under this FDR New World Moral Order plan. So fairly socialist in the sense that all world resources and banks, foreign investment, railroads, and power would be nationalized. And so how about that? How about that worldview of Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1942? And how about the fact that we see echoes of this in visions of a one-world government today, and just a variation on that theme. So it appears that, once again, another president is involved with these visions of a federated world run by a corporate elite centered in the United States and Britain. Interesting. Very, very interesting to see these concepts pop up again and again and again throughout history in the hands of the elites. And here we go again. So enjoy, history buffs. FDR's 1942 vision of a new world moral order. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.